We need to be the source. We need to let our kids know they can come and talk to us and ask us anything. That's also, this is just the building blocks for amazing relationships with your
Right.
kids.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Please be aware that today our episode contains references to human sexuality, intimacy, sexual development, and pornography. I'm talking to someone today who is determined to strengthen families by teaching digital citizenship, media literacy, and healthy sexuality education, including education about the dangers of online porn. She's the creator of a series of books, which we are going to dive into, as well as being the founder and CEO of Educate and Empower Kids. We met at a recent conference, and I'm so happy to welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Dina Alexander.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yay. Dina, I was reviewing your background, as one does, prior to us sitting down.
I hope so. Yeah.
And I see that your background is actually in recreation therapy. And I don't know that I would have put digital citizenship and media literacy in the same bucket, kind of, as recreation therapy, but I know very little about that area. So feel free to educate me. How did you end up landing in the area of digital wellness?
Well, as a mom, I have always, of course, been concerned about the education and upbringing of my children. Recreation therapy is basically like it's a group therapy degree, the way I did my program. But it all started, we had just moved and I was kind of trying to decide what to do with my life. And I came across an article on Facebook about teen porn consumption. In my mind, it was so outrageous. I thought, no, it can't be this bad. Like, what is the big deal? And I was like, okay, I got to look at this though. Started researching and I was shocked. I was like, no, okay, this is for real. This is a serious issue, not just because, okay, our kids are being exposed younger and younger and etc. But I found that what was in pornography was so incredibly misogynistic and, in my opinion, totally hateful toward women, and that this is where the majority of kids were slash are getting their sex education. And it was just like a fire inside of me. I thought, I got to do something. And I started researching more, talked to different friends, and realizing, because at first I thought, oh, this is a Christian issue, and I'm a Christian, and I thought, okay, people are, it's just Christians, like they're just scared to talk about this. And it was like, nope, my Jewish friends, my agnostic friends, everyone was scared to talk about sex, not let alone pornography. And I thought, how am I going to get people to talk to their children about pornography if I can't even get them to talk to their kids about sex? And so that's why the first set of books we wrote are the 30 Days of Sex Talks. And we have three books in that series for ages 3 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 plus. But that was the beginning of what I've been doing for the last almost 11 years of just trying to help parents raise healthy kids in the digital age.
I think that that issue that you just brought up is really misunderstood a lot because I will be talking to people and you mention pornography and people assume you're coming from this morality
Mhm.
standpoint and it's not
Yeah,
that, it's public health.
absolutely.
So, yeah, we can dive into that a little bit later. You
Sure.
and I just recently met at a conference called UCAP, which stands for Utah Coalition Against Pornography. Amy Adams and I from Healthy Screen Habits were presenting. We had a vendor's table right down the breezeway from yours. And you would have thought they were giving free puppies away down the hall because the swarm around your table was like three people deep. And so, of course, like, I had to go investigate. When I saw it was you, I knew why people were there. And you talked briefly about your series of books on talking about sexuality, but I actually knew you from your titles Noah's New Phone
Mm.
and Petra's Power to See. And both of those titles are on our bookshelf at this house and have been great conversation starters at my house. But the books that you were tabling at UCAP and generating the greatest buzz were your 30 Days of Sex Talks. And you've already covered about like, the age differences and stuff like that. Um, I think one of the most beautiful things about your 30 days books is they're kind of laid out like almost a lesson plan, right?
Hmm.
And you get a paragraph or three at about the background or the why behind
Hmm.
each talk, and then you get these follow-up activities or even better, a script or a list of questions. And I love how your material is completely thought out with ages and stages. For example, in 30 Days of Sex Talks for ages 3 to 7, you simply start by exploring senses and talking about all the amazing things that our bodies do, knowing that you have that very developmental approach. Like, how did you approach the creation of your books with your content, with development in mind?
Yeah, so my bachelor's is in family studies, and that was like one of like my favorite classes. And what I had actually TA'd for as an undergrad was in child development. And so I knew how important that was to break this down. And so you'll find, because people also will hear ages 3 to 7, like, why are you talking to kids that young about sex, da 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 da, not realizing that the book is mostly protective information and that it's the building blocks of creating healthy relationships, protecting our children from predators, and having positive ideas about sex. And so that's the first lesson is my amazing body. And the second lesson is my body belongs to me. And because it's so important, again, to help those young 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds understand how incredible their bodies are and that they are so worth protecting, and why we as parents are going to love them and protect them the best we can. Each book is broken down to help parents just have a simple conversation, particularly with that age group. Like some of those lessons, it might only take you 5 minutes to do. And that's part of it. Think of what our 3 to 7 year olds, they're only going to pay attention for about 5 minutes.
Mhm.
That's what you got. So you're going to, be simple, get right to the point. And that is what I really wanted for parents and kids to just start those building blocks to just create that awesome foundation of knowledge. But more importantly, that awesome foundation of your kids knowing that they can talk to you about these sensitive topics, that you are not going to be awkward, that you're not going to say, I'll tell you when you're older, or why are you asking me that question? It's very positive. We're trying to avoid shame. We're trying to help our kids see that sex is amazing, that this is a wonderful, amazing thing in our lives, and it's special, and that our bodies are special. And so we're going to treat ourselves and other people with kindness and respect. So that's where, again, like it was important to just develop these books for each age group, because as all of us know, we want to have those age appropriate discussions. But that's also why in the 12 plus, we talk about some serious stuff. And it's a lot of things that parents forget about, or they assume that their kids are going to get in sex ed class at high school, forgetting that high school sex ed is, pregnancy avoidance and STD avoidant, not a lot about having a healthy relationship or knowing the difference between a healthy relationship and an abusive relationship or
It's very, like, I would say that curriculum is very much designed under the male gaze.
mm, for sure, for
It's
sure.
very mechanics based.
Mm-hmm.
and does not say anything to girls about, or boys for that part, about like what you talk about, that thing called intimacy, that thing called
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely. It's so important. And we just, again, we forget and think about how busy we are as parents. That's again why we made those lessons short and simple, even for the older kids. Like there is a lesson on emotional intimacy. There
mm-hmm,
is discussion of the progression of a relationship because that is something that is falling apart in our culture. We have kids, teenagers thinking that most of a relationship is going to happen via text and second or third date, that's when we're going to give oral sex and it's like a handshake
yep,
instead of it being special and intimate. So there's just a lot of important topics that are meant to get our kids thinking. Even, those older kids, let's say you haven't had any discussions and your child is now 10, 11, 12. It's like, that's okay.
mm-hmm.
There's never too early. It's never too late. You're going to start getting your kids thinking about what they want in life, their self-respect, that they are deserving of, again, they're deserving of a healthy, good relationship.
I love it. Yeah. And I think we can't talk about sexual development with kids anymore without addressing pornography. And you
Absolutely.
can't talk about porn without talking about screens, which that's
Hmm.
that's how we ended up
That's right.
at the UCAP conference. And I just want to interject. I want families to recognize the average age of exposure to pornography at this point is between 8 and 11 years old. So you're talking about a third grader. And the
Yep.
fastest growing sexual crimes are child on child sex abuse.
Absolutely.
And that's because kids see something and then they're curious. And so they go and they try to replicate behavior,
Absolutely.
typically on younger children around them. So
Yeah.
that translates to siblings, cousins, neighbors, fill in the blank. So, healthy screen habits stance on porn. I want to reiterate because I think this is so critical that we say this again and again. It's not morality based.
That's right.
You get to decide the values for your family. But our stance on porn comes from a public health threat.
I agree with that because again, like people, again, we think of it as when we, as adults, right? What we see, and so a lot of parents might be like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" Da 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 da. But we have to remember those undeveloped brains of 8, 9, 10, even 15, 16, consuming pornography and thinking that no means yes, or that she deserves it. Because as you know, in porn, a woman is never a woman. She's a girl, she's a slut, she's a whore. And those kind of behaviors, it's usually there's some form of like, body punishing sex for the woman. And I think of it as every future lawyer, doctor, policeman is being raised on a diet of porn, seeing
Mm-hmm.
this. And that's frightening when we think of all of our future leaders, legislators, having watched this and thinking there's there's no way to think you're going to think less of yourself or the opposite gender when you are watching this. And again, as a child and as a young person, those images are being, imprinted. I know that a lot of people worry about addiction. I worry about the fact that these images basically become part of a child or teenager's belief system. That this
Mm-hmm.
is where it becomes part of their, that sexual template is being created between 8 and 12. And when these are the images that are being, imprinted on their brain, that is a worry. That is a huge concern. And that is a public health issue.
Yeah. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, let's get more into your books.
At what age should I give my child a smartphone? How much screen time should I allow each day? What are the best filters to use on my family's devices? Sound familiar? These questions and more are answered at the Healthy Screen Habits website. We've curated the best articles, books, videos, and many other resources to help you figure out how you want to use technology in your life. Click on the awareness section to learn about the issues and dangers surrounding screen use. Then click on the Tools page to download printables you can use with your family today, including the Healthy Screen Habits Family Technology Plan. Visit our website at www.healthyscreenhabits.org for the resources and tools you need to get started.
I'm speaking with Dina Alexander, author of 30 Days of Sex Talks. So we talked a little bit earlier about the younger kid book. That would be the one that's for ages 3 to 7. And now let's talk about the slightly older kid book. Like you've gotten into some of it a little bit, but this one is geared for kiddos age. Actually, I've got I wrote it down wrong in my notes. It's 8 to what's the end?
11.
8 to 11.
Yeah.
Okay. The math I had written down wasn't making sense. Okay, so we've got 3 to 7, and then we've got 8 to 11. And I gotta give you credit, Dina. You start out the gate in that 8 to 11 book with anatomy, puberty, mechanics of intercourse. I mean, a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, many people like of my generation were handed a book or told to read the box of tampons, the package insert for instruction. And, so knowing that the equivalent of that today is Google, right?
Yeah.
Why do you come from this standpoint, if it's not already clear by the way I introed that? Why do we want to be our kids' go-to for sex ed instead of a Google search?
So when a child, they might be curious and they're doing simple, innocent searches looking for answers, especially if they have a parent that has given the message of, we don't talk about this. And there's a lot of ways that parents give that message without even realizing it. And so that is why we need to be really obvious about, you can talk to me about these things. That's why we start the conversation, about a lot of these topics. But when a child has that innocent search, they heard the word vagina, they want to see boobs. This is an 8, 9, 10-year-old girl or boy, and they're coming away instead of just seeing a few sexy pictures that are half clothed women, like, we might have seen in a Playboy magazine 30 years ago. Instead, they're coming away with some pretty violent pornography. They're stumbling upon things that most adults don't even understand, that they certainly are not practicing in their sexual relationships. And again, they're coming across really misogynistic images. They're coming across things that, are, not intimacy based. People don't realize there's nothing intimate in pornography. It's about
Mm-hmm.
the act. There's no hand holding, hugging, caressing. Now that for quote feminist porn, they do add a tiny bit of that to draw women in, a couple of kisses and a couple of caresses, but it still ends the same way, right? With the woman on her knees or something, right? So this is my big concern of where we need to be the source. We need to let our kids know they can come and talk to us and ask us anything. That's also, this is just the building blocks for amazing relationships with your
Right.
kids. This is how they know, maybe they have a friend who they're concerned about is suicidal. Maybe they're trying to decide if they're gay or straight. They're trying to come out, or they're just trying to figure out their own body. Yes, maybe I'm going to get my period and I'm scared. How do I talk? Who am I? They should know and feel like they can talk to mom or dad. No big deal. Like, this is not a big deal. That's why we approach these conversations calmly, matter of fact, not like this is
And
an event and we need
and
to be
using the
nervous.
yeah, and using the correct language. Like
Absolutely.
the word porn, when you drop it in a crowd of people, is a real conversation stopper. But except in my house, where I mean we talk about pornography, we talk about porn, we talk about, I mean, all the stuff all the time,
Yeah,
because it kind of, to borrow from Harry Potter, it had to be the thing that could be named to
that's
bring it
right.
out into the light. So say the word, say the name, and yeah, and it gives you the power back for it.
Yeah, and it's amazing what your kids will come back with as you create these conversations. And, maybe you're scared to talk about, you don't want to go right to penis and vagina. That's okay. Our books start with, you can talk about relationships, you can talk about respect, you can talk about um, puberty, whatever, these other things that are maybe a little less intimidating. And you start those because, especially, a lot of families will have, say, the one child that doesn't want to talk about it. Maybe it's not the parents that are uncomfortable. Maybe it's one of your kids is uncomfortable. Well, that's where you start with these simpler, maybe less, like I said, intimidating topics, and you start building that foundation to talk about some of the more serious things. And what I have found over the years, each of my kids has shared incredible, crazy stuff that is going on at their high school,
Hmm.
conversations happening in the back of the classroom that you would never guess, that you just don't like. So I like, here's an example. So I was doing a little YouTube video on predators. And so it's on YouTube, but I was describing about how predators groom kids. And I had my 16-year-old son edit it. And he finished it and he's like, Mom, everything you said on that was right. And in my mind, I'm like, well, duh, of course it's right, right? But he was like, and I was like, well, what do you mean? And he goes, there was a kid in my class and he was showing me like that he had gotten these nude photos of his girlfriend or this girl. And I asked about it and he was like, I asked, how did he get that? And he said, he started telling my son about it. And he was like, it was grooming. He had paid her compliments. He had made her feel special, given her little gifts, these little things to basically, groom this girl. And so our kids, again, are learning how to do these grooming behaviors. They're basically learning to be abusive by watching pornography. But when you are able, my point though is that when you start these conversations and continue them, you're opening the door for your kids to tell you and talk to you about so many different things. And it is such an amazing thing to be able to sit at the dinner table and have your kids be so open with you. It's an amazing feeling and it's an amazing bond that you can build.
Right. And so many people believe that porn specifically is a boy problem.
Mm,
Can you talk about
I wish
that?
I,
Share what you know.
yeah, it's really not because again, a few years ago, the porn industry realized, oh, we have half the population that we could make money from. So they started gearing marketing porn toward women and girls. And that's again where we have feminist porn or a popular search term is porn for women. And like I said, it's got about 2 minutes, 1 minute more of kissing or romance, quote unquote, in it. And then it's the same as the rest of the porn. It's still, again, not intimacy based. There's sometimes name calling. There's still sometimes hitting or slapping or spitting, on women. There's still these things, but it's manipulative, right? They are geniuses. These are not, small time, little producers. These are people who know the culture, know their craft, and know how to hook people, especially kids, into more watching more and more. And it is no way that it is just a boy problem anymore. I
No.
have spoken with so many girls, and the worst thing we can do is treat our girls like there's something wrong with them or they're weird if because they have seen it or because they're tempted by it too. It's like if we act like it's okay for boys to masturbate and it's not okay for girls,
Right.
right?
And interestingly, from what I've read, girls tend to view porn together. It tends to be more of a group activity of, oh, look up this, look up that, whereas boys tend to be solitary. Like the initial exposure
Yeah.
will be more like that. And so let's swing this back around to kind of healthy screen habits land. And how can teaching our kids to be media savvy help form this more healthy sense of self that will kind of also teach them about this. They refer to these things as like digital drugs.
I like that. So being media savvy means that you're able to look at a video or an image and break it down, right? And to see past the overt image, right? Because we might see, we might view pornography and we're captivated perhaps by the sex, right? Okay, whoa, our human biological brains, we are going to be drawn toward naked bodies. Just like when we're at the beach, our eyes are immediately drawn toward the skin around us, men and women, right? That's nothing, that doesn't mean that we're bad people or we're sexist or whatever or perverts. It's human nature that our eyes are drawn toward skin, right? And so we want our kids to understand pornography or any media that there are values being shared, that
Mhm.
there are hidden messages, and that, particularly with, say, pornography, that the hidden message is that, typically is you can do anything you want to a woman and that she's less than. Most of the time in pornography, like this is a media savvy point, is that typically the woman is at a lower position than the man. She might be on her knees, on her back, whatever, but she is always beneath the man, is typically what I have seen in porn. That's a small thing, but that's a big message.
Mhm.
If she's always down, lower, lesser than him. It's a big message when she's not called a woman, when she's called a slut, a whore, even just a girl. It's the same thing that the Nazis did by never calling Jewish people. By trying to make them be seen as animals, it made them feel okay to treat them poorly. And it's the same thing with pornography. We don't, people viewing this don't want to think of this as, oh, that could be my sister, my mother, my aunt. They want to think of this as this is some slut who wants it or deserves it, and she's, asking for it, let's say, right? So these are, those messages, like we want to think, like I said, it's just kinky sex, but they are, there's those, that's why, a lot of kids, they're also, say, feeling bad about their bodies, that they can't, both boys and girls, when they view pornography, typically feel bad about their own bodies because they don't look like the ideal, or they're not performing the gymnastics that's going on sometimes in pornography, right? So these are, things to help our kids. We want them to understand. And I'm not saying, hey, sit down and show your kids porn tonight and break it down. But I'm saying maybe look at a commercial, listen to a song and break it down and talk about with your child, what is the message there? You can do this with like a commercial. What are they selling? Why are they acting the way they are? Why are they acting like that hamburger is the best thing in the entire world? They're trying to get us to buy something, right? And so same thing with pornography. They're trying to get us to stay and watch, right? So they are going to show outrageous things. They're going to sometimes humiliate the woman in order to get us curious and thinking what's going on there, or why are they, we're hooked in because, you know, it's sex, right? It's exciting, it's interesting, but also helping our kids. This is a great discussion I had with my kids, was helping them understand that when we have sexual imagery, typically the violence disappears. It's hard to see that there is a certain level of violence in most pornography, even if that level of violence is just name calling, right?
Mhm.
Or light slaps to the woman, right? But they tend to disappear because we're so focused in on the sex.
Right. Or
And
the
so,
rest of the person disappears. It becomes
yeah,
very objective in that it's like it's
that's
just
right.
certain
That's right.
parts and
Yes,
like the complete, there's no shots above the neck
that's right. Again, like that.
until the quote unquote money shot.
Yeah, and
And,
so that's such an important point you're making, because that's also how we can dehumanize and
mhm.
not think of this as a human woman who deserves love and respect. Because if she's just an object to be screwed, then we don't have to feel guilty watching that, right? We can just look at that and, haha, that's, or isn't that, hot? Instead of thinking of, this is a human, this is a person, that deserves compassion. And so that's like, again, there's a great TED talk where the speaker refers to porn as sex without hands, that you don't see hands like, say, loving and caressing because they're focused in on the orifices, right? Or they're focused in on the penis and the vagina and the act, not the human.
Yeah, so we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Dina for her healthy screen habit. From brand new parents to parents of teens who already have their own smartphones, Healthy Screen Habits presentations can help you navigate parenting in this digital age. We cover topics like creating your own family tech plan with a template that helps you guide your conversations and how to improve our kids' mental health through healthy screen habits. If you have a book club, bunco group, or even a group of neighborhood moms that you'd like to gather together for creating a plan on how your kids are going to play together, grow together, and what apps to look out for, let's have a mom's night. In-person or virtual presentations are available. Reach out to us at healthyscreenhabits.org. Click the Book a Speaker button and let's get the fun started. I'm speaking with Dina Alexander, mom of 3 and founder of Educate and Empower Kids. Dina, on every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask for a healthy screen habit. And this is going to be a tip or takeaway that listeners can put into practice in their own home. What's yours?
There's so many things I could say, but with our conversation, I think it's so important to, again, build those amazing relationships with your kids, whether your time to chat in your family is, if that's at bedtime, if it's at dinner, wherever you can get your kids to start sharing. And it might be as simple as asking your kids questions like, what was the best and worst part of your day? What do you want to be when you grow up? Who is, what's something nice that you did for other people today? And you might think, what does that have to do with screens? But that, again, when you're building that relationship, that's when you can start getting ready again for these deeper conversations to talk about uncomfortable things like porn, like masturbation, like sexual harassment, like the good things, right? Like sexual intimacy and having boyfriends and girlfriends and the fun things there. You build that, and that is going to help them to be more media savvy, but more importantly, that they're going to talk to you when they've been exposed to porn, when they've seen something inappropriate, because it's confusing to a child. They're simultaneously turned on and traumatized. This is so confusing for a young child. So if we can build that rapport, build that relationship to be as close as possible, then when they have seen something inappropriate, or maybe they've seen something hilarious and amazing on a screen, whatever, they want to talk to you and share it with you.
As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show and a link to Dina's website, which has her amazing books, by visiting the show notes for this episode. You do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and find this episode. Dina, thank you so much for being here today and for helping families get through some tricky topics, some things that are hard to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. I loved being here.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.